Welcome to the Signal Drop, where we discuss all things telecoms. Whether you're a newbie, a nerd, or anything in between, this podcast is for you.
So over the course of this podcast, you'll hear from the Mpirical trainers imparting their knowledge, you'll hear from the Mpirical team, and from time to time, we'll even bring in the odd guest speaker. Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Signal Drop. This is the final episode in the season. It's possibly the only season that we'll do, but we'll see how we get on there.
Until Spotify pick us up, of course.
Yeah, well, we're already on Spotify.
Other music streaming platforms are available.
Of course. With me in the studio, I'm Gavin. With me is Kev.
Hello.
And also Tom.
Hello.
And also Morgan.
Hello.
And as usual, the best bits of the podcast before we started recording when we were planning it. But here we go. The podcast this week is really following off the back of a major announcement that I saw in the press, which relates to insurance premiums for cyber security cover. Yesterday, it was announced that insurance premiums have gone down since COVID. So with such excitement buzzing around in the industry, we thought we'd focus on security. Actually, we had security planned already. But
at least it's not insurance.
Yeah, it could have been insurance. But we're mixing things up a little this week for our final podcast. And as such, it's more of an interactive podcast, which actually probably doesn't exist, but you can play along with us as we go through this. So what I'm going to do is hand over to our quizmaster for the day, and he can explain how we are about to finish off this podcast.
Yes, hello everyone, and welcome to Mpirical's one and only cybersecurity or 80's band quiz. And I'm absolutely delighted. Yeah,
literally one.
I mean, let's find one somewhere else. That'd be great. So I am your host, Kevin. I wasn't introduced by Gavin, but I'll introduce myself. That's fine. I'm sure you will all know me by voice because I'm so famed in these Mpirical podcasts. So we're going to go through for a quiz. I'm hoping we can get some quiz intro music added in later on because I'm almost fulfilling an ambition here to be like a sort of radio quiz master. So
actually, you should pause now, and Stuart could edit it in.
So, without much further ado, let's play Mpirical Mastermind. So just to clarify the rules, because Morgan seems rather unsure by what we mean by the term 80's band. That is a musical band. A band is people that play instruments and sing songs that originate from the time period 1980 all the way through to 1989. So hopefully the rules are clear, everyone. We're all good to go?
Not a radio frequency band.
Yeah, we
established
that.
I think you've gone through the rules about 3 times now, so anyone listening is probably just desperate to get on with the quiz.
Yeah, but of course we'll have edited that out.
Yeah, sure.
I ruined that, Kev.
So are we all clear on the rules then?
We think so.
Okay, well let's make a start and see how we get on. So the first, my first 80's band or cyber attack, Amazulu.
Who's this
80's band or cyber attack? Well, it's to the room.
Oh, to the room. Amazulu.
I'm a Zulu, or Amazulu.
Are you a Zulu?
Amazulu. A-M-A Zulu.
Cyber.
I'm going to say 80's band.
Cyber.
Okay.
I think 80's band
I say
cyber.
No,
Well,
you
you-
can't do that.
80's band.
So 80's band, British reggae bands. I mean, the only experience I have of this band, who are slightly before my time, they did appear on the kind of the BBC anarchic comedy show, The Young Ones. And I just remember a funny scene that I'm not going to reenact.
This isn't actually an opportunity for Kev to express to the world his cyber security knowledge.
Do you see how?
No,
it's
an
the other way.
opportunity for music.
I've been rumbled.
We've seen right through
Okay,
that.
well, moving swiftly on that note, question number 2. 80's band or cyber attack? Vulcan bot.
Oh.
I'm going to say cyber attack.
It's got to be bot is in the title.
Yeah,
I mean,
but is it a trick? That's the question.
It's a pretty badass name for a band if it were one.
Vulcan bot.
Yeah, I might steal it actually for my power metal group that I do in my spare time.
Cyber attack.
Yes, that one was a sad. I think bot's a little bit of a giveaway. So this was a Trojan botnet in Vietnam that primarily targeted the Vietnamese mining industry as a kind of political protest attack. Okay, moving swiftly on. Question number 3. World of Hell.
World of Hell.
80's band.
I can't see you having their back catalogue, so I reckon it's a cyber attack.
I'm going 80s band. I'm feeling 80s band.
Well, I feel slightly offended. I mean, I could have their merchandise, their CDs and everything if they were an 80s band as well. They're actually, well, rather than being a cyber attack, they're actually a grey hat hacking group that were involved in the defacing and attack of lots of websites back in the early days of 2001. Moving swiftly on. Question number 4. 5-star.
5-star. 5-star
Personal.
definitely were an 80s band. Definitely. I can vaguely remember.
Go on, Gav, what's the most famous song?
I can't remember that. But I can remember the group.
Yeah, I think we've kind of given away that this isn't. I've kind of picked a personal favourite here, System Addict.
Yes.
Great song. So again, another UK band from the 80s. They were, I think they were all related to each other actually. Okay, next one. Question number 5. Red October.
Oh, that sounds like a cyber attack.
Great film, by the way.
It is, yes. Cyber.
Red October.
Sounds like a metal band.
I think they all kind of sound like metal bands. To be
Yeah,
honest.
that's fair. I'm going 80s band
I'm
again.
going 80s band, I think, on that one.
Okay, Red October is, well, it's spyware, so cyber attack. And this targeted diplomatic, governmental and scientific research organisations. And its origins remain unknown, so we can only speculate on where it came from. There is some clues in the codes, but yeah, at the moment it's, the people who did that. Spit it out,
mystery.
Kevin. Yeah, it's a mystery.
Tom,
But
are
I
you
think
part
we
of
can
it?
probably
My
guess.
part of that. It's quite common that a lot of spyware or cyber attacks, they don't know the origin of them. And that's sort of the advantage of malicious actors using the internet, is that all your activity is concealed. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't say that word very fast.
And speaking of that,
Tom, stop trying to drop facts into what is.
I'm trying to lengthen.
So you've completely taken my train of thought there. Yeah, sorry, what I was going to say is within the code itself, there was some Russian slang words found, but there were also some exploits that were more typical of Chinese cyber attackers. So, hey, who knows? It probably came from the UK.
We're actually the only country in the world that admits to commit cyber attacks. Another interesting fact.
Well, we admit to
The
the ones we
British
want
are
to
so
admit to.
polite.
Well, some of us.
That was us.
Yeah, it was us.
Yeah, we're so
Sorry.
polite that we admit to cyber attacks. Yes, tally-ho, that was us. Anyway, moving on from generalisations about the British people from our one American in the room. On to the next question. Wiper.
Wiper.
Is it like spelled with a Y? Something
Like a windscreen wiper.
Oh,
W-I-P-E-R.
so boring. Okay.
It sounds a bit boring for both, really. But
I could see it in both of us. Well.
Yeah, I'm gonna say cyber attack.
I'm going to say the same.
I'm going to go different. I'm going to say 80s band.
Well, maybe you should have stayed the same
I
because
should have
it's
stayed
a
the
cyber
same.
attack.
What's a cyber attack?
Yeah, so Wiper, I mean, it's now also a kind of category of malware. So as the name suggests, it's designed to destroy data on infected systems. So
To
this
wipe it? Does it
to
wipe
it.
the
It
data?
wipes it. There we go. So
Who knew?
it's quite a snappy title. So Saudi Aramco, who are the world's largest oil company, they were targeted as part of this attack. Okay, moving swiftly on. We haven't got too many more, folks, so don't worry if you are tiring of this format. So the next one is Titan Rain.
Titan Rain.
It's also a cool name.
It's hard, isn't it? See, you were doubting it at the beginning,
Oh,
but
that's straightforward. I'm gonna go 80s band on that one.
Titan Rain. I'm going to go cyber attack. Go on, I'll be different.
Wait, what kind of rain? I missed this word in the
Titan
5th
rain.
grade
As in
spelling
weather
bee.
rain or
REIGN is the one that I missed in the spelling bee. So it's rain
That,
as in the weather.
also would be a cool
It
name
would,
for a
wouldn't
band,
it?
but
Okay, right.
It's Rain, R-A-I-N.
Oh, right, I see. I'm going to go 80s band.
Cyber attack. Although I think I'm going to reserve that. I'm sure there'll be a band out there nowadays that will probably call that. And again, there will probably be some sort of thrash/power metal group somewhere. So no, this was a series of coordinated cyber espionage attacks, allegedly originating from China, that targeted the US Department of Defense and other defense contractors. And last but not least, China Crisis.
That's a tough one.
China Crisis. I'm sure a rock band.
So, are you being serious?
Yeah.
It does sound,
I think they
I
are.
feel like it's tricking us. I think it's a 80s
Why would I
band.
trick you, Tom?
Why? What's the point of this quiz?
Yeah. So can we get an answer?
80s band.
Yeah.
Morgan?
Cyber.
China Crisis, they're still going strong. They did a 40th anniversary tour in 2022. They a new wave band that originate from Knowsley, which for our international listeners is near Liverpool, but not in Liverpool. I'm sure people from Liverpool like to make that distinction. But yeah, they were a new wave band in the 80s. I couldn't tell you any of their songs. Sorry, I've just got the facts that are conveniently written down on this piece of paper.
They're probably going to headline Glastonbury on a Sunday at some point in the future.
Or we're going to get a cyber attack in the near future that has the same name, which will render this quiz entirely redundant. So that brings to an end.
On that note.
The first and last 80s band or cyber attack quiz. And I guess we can move on to more serious topics now.
Well, what did we learn from that particular diversion from our normal?
It's impossible to tell what a cyber attack or an 80s band name is, right?
Or it really speaks to the creativity of the people that come up with the names for these cyber attacks.
That's true.
Not just the names, but the way that some of these attacks actually work is just incredible. You were just talking today, Kev, about wind turbines being attacked.
Yep.
Which, do you want to kind of enlighten us a little bit more on that?
So I had the privilege of attending an event last week where the speaker, whose name I have forgotten, I apologise for that, spoke about an attack on some wind turbines. And it really is just incredible at how all of our infrastructure, critical infrastructure in fact, can be connected. Obviously we want it to be connected to monitor it remotely and to carry out other functions. But of course, that leaves them open to the potential for attack. So with these wind turbines, they've been infected with malware, with a virus. And what that effectively did was it didn't allow the turbines to start. So the engineers would attempt to restart, and after a few minutes or so, the wind turbines would just power down. So really quite a subtle attack that's just more than anything designed to disrupt. And we can perhaps make some assumptions as to the origins of the cyber attacker's origins. Typically, these attacks to disrupt critical infrastructure tend to have the backing of nation states. And of course, there are lots and lots of other ways that countries can be targeted. Now we live in such a connected world. So
it's an interesting concept that you can power down a wind turbine, because you just think the wind would stop blowing.
Well, I just
which
think
might power it down.
It'd be hilarious if they were hiding somewhere near the wind turbines, and the second that they got them fixed again, and they were laughing because they were
well, you say that. Well, actually, the cybersecurity firm that were ultimately brought in to deal with this had spotted that every time the wind turbines were restarted, they would see a big spike in the temperature of the bearings within the turbine, which was obviously as they were starting up. And that was where they saw each time that the turbine was being restarted. But we laugh about the wind powering it, but actually wind turbines, when it's too windy, won't actually rotate. So they do need to have some element of control there.
And also, you were mentioning something about trains, because you are an avid train spotter, aren't you, Tom?
Am I? Since when?
Sorry,
that's just because I don't have a driving licence. I have to wait for them. I was mentioning that I went to a talk a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, on hacking trains. And the person giving the talk was talking about how traditionally trains that were coupled together, linked together, they used to have a metal rod in between each of the carriages, whereas now they're linked together electronically. And it's using Wi-Fi. So they were actually able to hack into the Wi-Fi which these coupling systems were using, and were able to uncouple these trains while moving, which, obviously someone who uses trains, is quite concerning. And that's also the Wi-Fi which is often used to host people who are on the train. If you're working on your laptop, for example, that's the same Wi-Fi which is used for decoupling the trains.
So, I mean, we're quite familiar with the low-hanging fruit aspect of cybercrime, and a lot of the time it's for financial gain, but ultimately people don't die. People lose a lot of money. Going back to the insurance reference I made earlier on, but it seems to be becoming more and more prevalent that these cyber attacks are targeting critical infrastructure, not for financial gain, but purely for disruption. For what reason to be determined.
Well, although I guess ransomware perhaps plays a part in that, doesn't it? I guess if you can inform people that you have this capability and that you won't
unleash
reveal
it,
unleash it or whatever.
Well, cyber attacks generally by themselves are not necessarily super impactful. It's when they have another medium in which they can be utilised as well. So when we look at Russia and how they do cyber warfare, they normally pair it with physical warfare as well. And so that's what's starting to happen now, is we're moving towards this cyber physical warfare, where cyber systems meet the edge of physical systems. And this is where we're having these large impacts now in things like you mentioned, such as critical infrastructure or industrial control systems, nuclear power plants, things like that. That's where the impact's starting to come from cyber attacks. And that domain is called operational technology. So we are seeing a transition towards that. And it is kind of scary, to be honest.
I think in some ways we benefit in the UK from having really antiquated rail architecture. So I'm going to assume that this attack did not take place in the UK, probably somewhere with really high-tech trains. I'll never believe that. What type of trains were these?
Not so I'm not as avid train spotter as Gav says I am. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, there we are. Sort of the more technology that we introduce, I guess the greater the attack surface and the more that we have to be mindful of that.
More complexities, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the things to point out, as a training company, this kind of cybercrime is not something that we focus on specifically. There's a lot of other companies that are out there that deal with this specific area, but we do deal with security, but it's very much more from a kind of a cellular network perspective. So we look at security from the device's perspective, so how devices can securely access a particular generation of technology, how we can protect traffic as it goes over the air, signaling and kind of user plane traffic, and also kind of protection of roaming and things like that. We don't actually focus on the attacks that could be targeted towards the end user. But that said, it's just as important piece of the puzzle, that's associated with the whole cybercrime picture.
We also need to think about, as cybersecurity is a thing that ebbs and flows, you need to think about the direction in which it's going. And often, as you said before, it follows the money. So thinking proactively in terms of 5G, we need to think about where's the next area which is going to be vulnerable to cyber attacks. And it looks like a lot of telecom operators are currently focusing on open gateways and monetizing them as another
it's certainly one
revenue.
Feature,
Yeah. So it's very highly likely that that's going to be the focus for cyber attackers against telecom networks.
Yeah, and the thing to bear in mind with 5G is that we have all of these exciting futuristic use cases, so involving things such as remote healthcare, for example. So, once again, we can see the need to have extremely secure communication methods, because we talk a lot about the benefits of these high speeds and all of these new applications, but actually there isn't really any discussions, certainly that we come across too often, where people talk about the security implication, perhaps even some of the ethical implications with some of these use cases. When we're talking about critical safety systems, where actually if something falls over, if something breaks, if something is attacked, we don't lose money, we don't lose data, actually we're losing lives. And I think that's the really important thing that we have to bear in mind with any new innovation is how do we protect critical security, systems which may have a direct impact on people's lives, how do we protect them against attacks?
There is a big discussion around this, because when you're looking at, systems that are this complex, you have two schools of thought. You have the cybersecurity school of thought, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But when you flip that on its head from a safety perspective, it's security, reliability, and availability. So although they sound similar, there are differences in the way that people perceive from a security perspective and a safety perspective.
Easy for you to
can't say. A safety perspective, how these should be implemented correctly.
Who decides that?
Who decides that? Well, I'm not sure myself, honestly. I just know of experience when speaking to people within the operational technology field that there's lots of arguments between people who are working in penetration testing for cybersecurity and people who work in safety. So if you take, for example, once again, a power plant, we have lots of physical pieces of hardware that exist. And those physical pieces of hardware are safety elements, sensors and things to check to see if levels of certain tanks have been filled up or not. And often they have physical measures implemented to stop a tank filling too much, for example, of a dangerous material. Whereas from a security perspective, they're looking at it as more of a software approach or a networking approach. We're getting sensor information in to provide information on how full that tank is. So there's that middle ground of what's the correct implementation. And I guess it would vary depending on the company or the organisation.
So is a scenario realistic whereby the tank of Nutella that fills the jars could be hacked and we could have some kind of Nutella overflow incident where the tank just keeps producing
That would be
Nutella?
amazing.
Maybe in a kind of Willy Wonka.
You're just going to have to be underneath it and eat it all. It's going to waste.
I'm going to tell my kids that.
There's a company that actually do that with beer, which you'd be interested to know. They've made an industrial control system and it's used for brewing beer, and they demonstrate it by hacking it. So you could be under there with your glass like, oh no, I've hacked it again.
I would just like to say that I saw such a system in action at MWC in Barcelona, and it was one of the most popular stands at the event, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But Nutella or beer?
No, very much beer, yeah. I think Nutella might be really expensive.
Having been to Mobile World Congress. Yeah.
So bringing things back to a more serious note. So I guess going back to what you said, Tom, it's this kind of age-old battle between innovation and risk, and people who work in risk are naturally conservative, as they need to be, and people who work in tech and innovation, it's kind of move fast and break things. And obviously there needs to be some form of negotiation that takes place, or some form of regulation that does mandate organisations to implement secure kind of risk assurance, risk management policies, and they do that before they start running with the technology, because we see this with AI. There is almost a gold rush to these systems, but are they secure? Are they being implemented correctly? You know, all of the other things that we see in software development in terms of risk management and in terms of security, are these being skipped over in this new world that we live in,
Most
where
definitely,
systems get implemented really quickly? You know, we have agile methodologies, and perhaps some of those guardrails that existed in the past aren't present. And this is something that, particularly with the growth of AI, particularly with the growth of systems being controlled remotely, such as those in the energy grid, such as other safety critical systems, such as trains, for example.
It's already easy enough to get your hands on some malicious code. You know, is it feasible you just ask generative AI to produce a piece of malicious
code?
Again,
this comes back to those guardrails, and the people that produce these systems have to ensure that there are sufficient safeguards in place, that these systems can't be poisoned, that these systems are trained correctly not to output that information.
I think it's that's the low-hanging fruit that we spoke about previously. That's what that will be used for. But if you're looking for more bespoke tools, you're going to be looking on things like the dark web.
Yeah, and this isn't anything new, is it? I mean, these tools
not.
Exist, and you know, we can purchase botnets. You can. There's people for hired guns in the cybersecurity industry that can go out there and
someone was selling
carry out attacks.
an Office 365 vulnerability for, I think it was $3 million that I saw a couple of months ago on the dark web. I wasn't on it. I saw a screenshot. Don't report me. But I was speaking to someone about that at the time, and he was like, "That's a lot of money that for a vulnerability." And I thought, is it really though? If you're a government or a nation state,
or if you're Microsoft,
exactly.
And the damage that could do to your reputation.
It's nothing, is it? If you want to cause havoc,
and it's almost. I mean, there is an economy there is a cybersecurity economy, isn't there, where hackers working together. A lot of money flows around this system, and where the money goes, clearly this is something that will always continue.
That's why a lot of companies are starting to do promotional schemes where you can hack the company and they'll pay you for it. So instead of someone doing it maliciously, you get rewarded for hacking companies.
I think just to round this off and bring it back to the telecoms aspect, I mean, day in, day out, we hear of security breaches which basically have provided access to people's data. And I wonder if moving forward, as cyber attacks increase and the networks themselves are considered to be low-hanging fruit, what will garner the most complaints? You not having availability to the internet or access to the internet versus somebody stealing a username and password, which with so much multi-factor authentication taking place today, it's probably less of a concern.
It sounds like a Black Mirror episode, to be honest. I think a lot of people complain more about availability of a service than they do about compromise of a service. Most definitely.
Yeah. And hopefully that's not where we're heading in the future. These attacks on networks, they do exist. They're not necessarily well publicised, but you will certainly know about it if a major outage is caused.
But we also don't know about all the good work that's been done by all of those great people in cybersecurity that work for the good side, if you will.
Yeah.
There.
Tom.
Are they called blue hats, Tom?
Yeah.
Blue
you can
hats.
blue hats, red hats. Oh, Dawn, there's so many.
Oh, yeah, it's white hats.
Multiple
isn't it?
hats.
There's blue hats. No, there's blue hats as well. So blue hat's in a scenario where you're defending, and red hat's a scenario where you're attacking. And you can have purple hats as well, which is a combination of both.
At the
I
start
like
of
for the
this,
dark versus light analogy as a Star Wars
I'm all
fan.
about what these hats look like. Yeah.
Fedoras.
Oh,
Well,
maybe not.
as the planning stage for this podcast, Morgan did want the topic to be shopping, and I'm afraid
They said no.
that's the closest we can get is hats. And on that note, folks, I think we're done for podcast number 6. I hope you've enjoyed the season, and stay tuned to our marketing channels, and we'll let you know when season 2 is imminent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.